The American dream is a powerful attraction for destitute and desperate people across the globe, and where there is need, there is greed from those who will attempt to exploit these willing workers for their own obscene profits. David Estes, U.S. Attorney for Georgia. Migrant workers are one of the most vulnerable and exploited groups in the U.S. today. We rely so much on them, yet they're largely kept in the shadows. The search for a better life for themselves and their families compels them to be on the front lines of several major industries, such as construction, agriculture, and service. Yet, they're faced with hazardous working conditions, wage theft, and abuse with little to no way to speak out in fear of deportation. During World War II, the U.S. government created the Bracero program, which employers used to contract about 400,000 Mexican laborers for farm work. It was eliminated in 1964 due to human rights violations and replaced with the H-2A visa for agricultural work. The H-2A visa program is created for agricultural workers, and the H-2B visa is for non-agricultural work like construction and landscaping. Driven by economic disparities, many migrants leave home in search of better opportunities, hoping to support their families and have a stable life in the U.S. Today, there are 10 states that largely depend on the H-2A program to supply workers for their farms, as Americans are no longer willing to endure long hours in the fields. Among these 10 states, 6 are in the South, including Kentucky, Louisiana, North and South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida. South Carolina has the least amount on the list with almost 4,000 workers, and Florida having the most with almost 23,000 workers. These workers are all being paid below minimum wage for their respective states. According to the SPL Center, the fatality rate for the agriculture and forestry industries are 7 times more than the national average. According to the KFF, non-citizen immigrant workers are disproportionately employed in occupations with lower wages that often do not offer employer-sponsored health coverage, contributing to higher poverty and uninsured rates. According to the Annual Review of Public Health, migrant workers are in dangerous and demanding jobs, working for less pay, longer hours, and worse conditions, and are subject to human rights violations, abuse, human trafficking, and violence. They take greater risks on the job and work without adequate training or protective equipment. They are 15% more likely to be fatally injured on the job than their native-born counterparts. The annual review also mentioned how workers may experience high levels of stress related to fast-paced environments. In the poultry industry, supervisors are concerned with getting the job done quickly and cheaply without any regard to worker safety. The stress at a job may be further exacerbated by fear of job loss or deportation. Limitations in English may also contribute to poor health outcomes as they work in riskier jobs and may not understand safety trainings. In terms of work safety, there have been several cases of teenagers being killed in their jobs. Duvan Robert Tomas Perez from Mississippi was only 16 when he was entangled in one of the machines he was going to clean at the Mar-Jac poultry plant where he worked. There were 2 other deaths that occurred at the same plant within the past 3 years, yet it seems that Mar-Jac didn't care to change or prevent the conditions that led to employee deaths. Another worker, Pedro Omar, died of a stroke while on a construction site in Nashville. Within Nashville's booming population growth also came construction companies' desire to bypass safety procedures and better working conditions. The Build a Better South report mentioned that Nashville was one of the most dangerous cities in the South for construction workers. The report from city data from Tennessee shows a spike in construction along with a spike in injuries and fatalities on construction sites throughout the state, especially in Nashville. In 2020, there were 100 laborers smuggled from Mexico and Central America to work under brutal and inhumane conditions in South Georgia. They were detained in work camps surrounded by electric fences with little access to food or safe drinking water. They were threatened with gun violence and deportation, and their passports and other important documents were confiscated from them. They picked onions for about 20 cents a bucket, yet the crime ring reaped over $200 million from their labor, often having other farmers in the area sold and traded to have them work on their fields. It's a common thing that we see, where people are promised a certain level of wages, good working conditions, good living conditions, and then they get here and find that it's a different story. Housing for these workers are often located in rural locations, lacking telephone service, increasing their social isolation and dependence on the employer. They lack both vehicles and access to public transportation, completely dependent on their employer for transportation to work, grocery stores, and banks. When workers do suffer injuries on the job, they're denied access to appropriate medical care and benefits. Their families do not get compensated if they're non-residents, and if they're non-citizens, they don't receive the full death benefit. The program that these workers are mostly under is the H-2A program, which is an agricultural program where a foreign worker's legal status is tied to their employers. That means that if they wanted to leave an abusive employer, they would be jobless and undocumented. Protections are in place for these workers, but they haven't kept pace with the program's growth, leaving workers vulnerable to abuse, mistreatment, and exploitation. In South Carolina, there are 14 inspectors that watch over the 162 farms that use foreign workers, and if problems arise, there's only one attorney and one paralegal to represent workers. They also make it difficult for legal aid workers to connect with the workers, with farm owners threatening them to get off their property with violence. Driven by the allure of the American dream, migrant workers find themselves on the front lines of crucial industries to the nation's economy and face a different reality full of hazards, wage theft, human rights violations, all hidden from the public view. The alarming fatality rates in the agricultural and forestry industries, coupled with the disproportionate employment of non-citizen immigrant workers in low-wage occupations, underscore the urgent need for change. The H-2A program, while designed to meet agricultural labor demands, leaves migrant workers tied to their employers, making it difficult to leave an abusive situation. As these human trafficking crime rings are being exposed and teenagers are killed on the job, it is important to advocate for change and demand reforms that prioritize the safety and rights of migrant workers, eventually offering them a road to permanent residency and citizenship. Migrant workers should be incorporated into our society as full members entitled to the same benefits, rights, and protections enjoyed by all workers in the U.S.